Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I am going to show you how I drew this bottle of champagne. I was cleaning my fridge out a couple weeks ago and I saw this bottle of champagne in the fridge. It was kind of slightly unwrapped, but it hadn't been opened yet, and I thought it looked really interesting the way the foil kind of crinkled off the edge. So I thought, why not? I'm going to sketch it. I'm working in a 9" by 12" Strathmore Tone Tan sketchbook. I really like this sketchbook. It's very affordable and I love the color and the little texture of the paper. I used a T-square to draw a line down the center of the paper. You can kind of see that white line very faintly. And then I measured out 2 inches from each side and drew a line up from there. And then I grabbed my colored pencils. I went right in with colored pencils and just started to sketch. I really wasn't thinking too much about this being a finished drawing, but then as I started working on it, I was really liking it. So I probably should have taken more time and done a pencil sketch and then been really precise with it, especially since it's a symmetrical object, which is something I struggle with, and there is lettering on the object, which is another thing I really struggle with. But I was just kind of in the flow and just playing with crayons. Now, what inspired me to use these crayons? I'm using a combination of the Neo Color 1 wax pastels by Crayons and my old art sticks, which are no longer being made. They are a Prismacolor product, basically like a Prismacolor lead in a stick form. And the reason why I was inspired to use these was because I learned of a new product by Crayons last week called a Neo Art, which there used to be a product called the Neo Art, which was completely different. That was a water-soluble pastel product, but this is a light-fast crayon. And the Want Monster had me bad. The Want Monster wanted those so bad. And so I did order some. And I'm waiting for them to arrive. But I thought, while I'm waiting for them to arrive, why not explore my old tried and true pastels? Now, you're probably thinking, Lindsay, those crayons are looking awful new. What are you doing ordering more crayons? I think it's a mental illness, honestly, that I must try all the new crayons. I don't know what it is. But also the art sticks. I think I had a set of 24 art sticks. I love them. They are well used. And this was many years ago. I bought the set of 48. That was the largest set the Prismacolor made. And there was like big rebates at the time. This was probably like 20 years ago. I'm ashamed to say it. I am ashamed. And I just kept using the 24 set. Never really dug into the 48 set because they're precious. Right now you can't even buy them because they're discontinued. But I'm like, you know what, Lindsay, this is ridiculous. Use them. You're not creating an art supply museum in your house. Use the supplies. And of course you can find, and there are supplies that you can use instead of these. It's not like you have to have the art sticks. You have to have the neo-colored ones. You can use colored pencils. You can use any sort of woodless colored pencils you can find. You could use watercolor crayons. You could use really anything for this. So I think sometimes I get into that vibe where A, they're precious, I can't get them again, or B, well, if I use them and other people are inspired, they can't get them, so I'm just kind of like teasing people with these supplies. And I'm like, you know what, Lindsay? You got these supplies to use them. You did not buy these supplies to put them on a shelf and admire them. So yeah, I just want this to be kind of like a, hopefully an inspiration for you to use your supplies. When I was posting about learning about those pastels a few days ago, somebody posted that they had a full set of the original Neo Art pastels in a box and they were too afraid to use them. And that just broke my heart a little bit because I'm like, girl, use those supplies. You use those pastels. They're yours. They want to be used. You deserve to use them. You know, and I think sometimes we think we're not good enough, right? We buy these things, but yet we think we're not good enough to use them yet. Well, how are we going to get quote unquote good enough unless we actually use them, right? One thing I really like about art crayons, these like hard, waxy pastels, is that they are like a colored pencil pigment in a stick. And they're really zero waste because you can block in your main colors and then go over them with a colored pencil if you want to. And these work really well on this Tone Tan sketchbook paper, which is a nice smooth paper. This is really, I think, an underrated supply. I really love the Strathmore Tone Tan mixed media paper. It's a nice thick paper. And honestly, if I thought I was going to spend this much time on the sketch, I spent about 2 hours on it, drawing, I should say. I would have gone with the mixed media paper because it's just a sturdier paper, but this handled this product just fine. I didn't need a heavier weight paper for this. But if I did know I was going to spend that much time, I would have just taken my mixed media paper because it's a sheet that I could frame it. And then I probably would have also spent more time on the drawing. You know what? You never know. You never know how much time you're going to spend on something, I guess, until you actually do it, right? But I really loved just kind of going in with these chunky crayons because you get to fill so much more space with so much less effort. Doing like a 9 by 12 painting with colored pencils could be kind of straining on your wrists. And even though these do seem to be as hard as a colored pencil, because it lays down so much, it is less straining. It's very grainy looking here, but that's fine. I'm doing these first layers, and Prismacolor, the Caran d'Ache Neocolor ones remind me of a Prismacolor almost more than the art sticks do. They are such a soft pencil, but a hard pastel, I know it's kind of weird, that if you color really hardly, you're going to fill up the tooth of that paper and not be able to layer. By being able to go in with a light hand and lay down block in colors, you don't fill up the tooth. There's still plenty of grain there to find purchase with a pencil later on. And that's what I did. And that worked out really well for me. I'm not somebody that's going to spend 40 hours on a colored pencil drawing like a proper colored pencil artist would. I am somebody that's going to kind of go in there fast and loose and then refine as I go and call it a day when I am happy with the way it looks. So I'm not going to be getting photorealism that way, but that's all right. I'm not a photorealist painter. I'm looking to kind of capture the spirit of something. And I wanted to capture the colors, and I just was really just taken by the crinkly foil. And then I really loved the contrast of the shiny metal cage around the cork and a little shiny cap, and then the crinkly foil, and then the glossy transparent bottle with the champagne in it. And to me, that's where the fun was, right? And I think that's what we have to do as artists, is find what appeals to us in a drawing and go for that, right? Find what appeals to us and then let that be the inspiration, not to necessarily slavishly copy what we have in front of us. And the reason I'm using this reference photo, I actually took a reference photo against my white backdrop, but this is actually from where I was sitting and sketching. So I decided to go with this one, even though, you can see kind of my messy background beyond the white. But kind of catch those things that really speak to us, the variation in the color of the glass. Actually, I see a much better bounced reflection of white on the glass from my reference photo than I could see in real life. So that's kind of neat. But yeah, if you go to Instagram, you can see the picture of the champagne bottle and my drawing side by side on Instagram. If you want to kind of go by that for a reference, you are more than welcome to. I'll probably upload this too on my blog, so you can also just grab that photo if you want to. But it was a lot of fun to draw. And I think that's what really we should go for. Now, obviously, I just kind of ran right in there with a black colored pencil without much care to do the lettering, and the lettering was real rough. It's not that great. I'm not going to lie. I actually think the lettering looked better where I was just kind of not doing letters, just kind of making marks to signify the letters. I think that looked better. That's probably what I should have done with that crest on the front. But actually, for just kind of charging in there without a plan, I think it's all right. An electric pencil eraser is probably one of the best investments a colored pencil artist can make, or somebody that's working with these woodless wax pastel crayons, because it does a great job at lifting up enough of the colored pencil or pastel that you can actually lay more down as if it wasn't there. That one is by Derwent. I had another one that was it was from Jerry's Artorama, I think, called Quick Fix. It worked really good, except my batteries corroded in it, so I had to get rid of that. There was no salvaging it. But really, I don't think you have to spend a lot of money for that to work. Now, here's something that's kind of neat. You can use odorless mineral spirits to dissolve the pigment in the wax pastels, or kind of woodless watercolor, woodless pencils, I should say. If it was watercolor, you could just use water. And this doesn't buckle your paper. It dissolves the pigment, but you do have to have a good amount of pigment there. If you don't have too much, it's not really going to do anything. Just like when you're using it with colored pencils, you got to have enough down there, but it's easy to lay down a lot with the pastels. So that's what I really like about them. And they're so slow wearing. Oh my word. I have done a few. It doesn't look like I've used them much, but I actually have used them quite a bit, and they just wear so slowly. Sorry about pulling this down below the camera frame. I just recently, actually this weekend, I redid my filming room, and my husband built me some new legs for my table, kind of shelves to use as legs, because I had a very shady situation happening that was holding up my table, and I had a lot of stuff on my table, so it was a miracle that it hadn't collapsed. And when I wanted to start moving my studio around, I realized that I didn't know if what I had holding up my desk would survive a move. And for Valentine's Day, I redid my husband's shop, and he made me some shelves. So that was really cool. And it worked out great, but I was still kind of getting used to filming in this area. So that's kind of one of the reasons I turned the camera on, just to see how everything looked, how the lighting looked, how everything, worked out. And I did find myself kind of pulling it below the camera because I moved my camera mount as well. So that was just kind of also just me practicing how that was going to work. So I didn't even know if I was going to get anything usable from this footage. Oh, I just love that art stick. Oh, so good. Anyway, I love that color. I love the colors, actually, and I'm hoping that those new Caran d'Ache crayons, I'm hoping that they will be colors that I don't necessarily have. And I think they will be. I think there'll be different colors than what I have in the art sticks and the Neocolor ones. So I think they're going to work all well together. And my plan may be to store them all together, because I find that if they're out and not in their original tins, for certain products, I use them more. For some things, I do like to have them all together. My Derwent Lightfast and my Caran d'Ache Luminance, for one thing, those only have colors on the ends of the pencils, and that's kind of a pet peeve of mine. I prefer pencils to be colored all the way, kind of like these crayons are, because it's very easy for me to identify what color I am going for, and it just makes it quicker to use. And often it's like the cheaper, like less, I don't want to say cheaper, but less expensive products like the Prismacolor pencils or a lot of the budget pencils that do that. They color the whole barrel, and I love that. It's just faster and easier for me. Plus, I think it's visually appealing. The more high-end pencils like the Derwent Lightfast and the Caran d'Ache Luminance just have that little flash of color on the end. And while it's lovely and it's elegant and demure and mindful, it's harder for me to figure out what color I have right off the bat. So I tend to use them less. And also they're more expensive and precious. So that, I think, also is a part of that. I was noticing that the value of the champagne was actually darker than the value of the label, so that's why I kind of charged in there with that really gorgeous kind of like Merlot color art stick to kind of get that. And I'm using a soft watercolor brush to brush away any crumbs, and that's actually I have two of those brushes, so I keep one that's just for dry brushing of crumbs away. A big blush brush would work really well, or even an inexpensive hardware store chip brush would work really well for that. So just a dry dedicated brush that you can brush away crumbs with is really great to have, because if you brush it with your hand, chances are you're going to catch crumbs under your skin and smear it. So honestly, try not to touch the paper with your fingers as much as possible anytime you're doing art, because if you wear lotion, if you have oily skin, just regular skin oils is going to do stuff. Plus that friction will smear the pigments. Now I will blend my pastel with my fingers sometimes, but that's on purpose, right? If you're doing color pencil, and watercolor, I would just try not to handle the surface of your paper any more than you have to. And I mean, I have dry skin, but I wear lotion, so I risk transferring that onto my paper, and I don't want to do that. So just a little tip there. I keep my odorless mineral spirits in a tiny mason jar that has a latch lid. My niece Rachel got me this in Las Vegas, so it's also a fun memory or a fun little gift. I put a couple cotton balls in the bottom, and then I saturate the cotton balls with the odorless mineral spirits, and I use Gamsol typically. And it doesn't have much of an odor, but that way I can latch it up when I'm not using it, because even though it doesn't have an odor, there are fumes there, and you want to be aware of that, especially if you're sensitive to fumes. Any solvent's going to work, but the like Gamsol is supposed to be one of the lowest toxicity solvents out there. Use whatever you want, though. It'll work. Baby oil, you can use baby oil for it, but it could leach through and leave an oil spot on your paper, so just kind of be aware of that. I don't find that I get any oil spots with the Gamsol, but both will work, and yeah, just good to know, I guess. So that's how I use that. That way I don't get too much on my brush, because if you get too much on your brush, then it takes a while to dry, and you got to let it dry before you go back over with more pencil, or you'll flatten out the tooth of your paper and it will get shiny and won't take any more product. Here I am mixing up a product called Brush and Pencils, Titanium White, and Touch Up Texture. So I went off camera a little bit to do this, but basically I just poured a little bit of the Touch Up Texture, which is a product that you can paint over an area of a colored pencil painting that's gotten too shiny and restore some tooth. But if you mix it with another product called Titanium White, which is basically ground up white colored pencil, you can make a archival paint that you can use to paint in highlights on your painting. And this is really handy for a couple reasons. For For one, it will bond with your painting, so it's not going to flake off like acrylic paint, gouache, or a gel pen might. It's archival. It shouldn't change in appearance over the years, and it bonds. Sometimes you go in there with a gel pen, it won't stick because you've got such a glossy surface, especially on a slick paper like this with this much colored pencil. So it's a really handy product to have. And then you also know that you can go over that. Like if I decide that I want to, I need a really light area, I can paint that in, and then I can color over it with a colored pencil. It will have enough grab to it. So it's just a really great product to have for a colored pencil artist. Not, 100% necessary. You could go in with some acrylic paint, but it might scrape off. If you do it as your last layer, like there, I just went, whoa, way too much. Of course, now looking back at it, it probably would have been fine. But the other thing with titanium white, it's also got a very cool undertone. So I didn't like how white, like almost blue white it was. So I would feel like I need to add a little bit of cream color to that just to warm it up a little bit. So that's just something that you find with like titanium white, especially when you're going in and adding it. There's a color called sand from Prismacolor that's really good for kind of using as a warmer highlight. I like to use, if I'm using a toned surface, I do like to use my Prismacolor pencils because they have more opacity to them than like an oil-based pencil or pretty much any other pencil. I find Prismacolors to be the most opaque. Derwent Lightfast are also nice and opaque, and so are the Derwent drawing pencils, so they all have that similar quality. I think because you always remember your first loves, right? My Prismacolor pencil were my first colored pencils. My art teacher said, get her Prismacolor pencils, like don't bother with anything else. And this was back in like probably 1980. I was like 5, 4. Well, no, I think by the time I was taking lessons with her, I was 5. So maybe it was like 81. I was really young and I got started with Prismacolor. And so that's always a very familiar product. It has changed over the years. I still have some of my original barrel Prismacolors. They are little nubs. And and they're usually the colors I haven't used very much because I have replaced open stock over the years. Nowadays, it's pretty affordable to get a set of Prismacolor pencils, much more than buying them open stock. But even open stock, I think they're around $1.50 a piece. They're not that expensive compared to other color pencils. Now I'm noticing here, and I didn't notice this because I was working flat, I'm noticing that I do have a little bit of an issue at the bottom of the bottle. I should be puffing it out a little bit more on the left-hand side. And then I added insult to injury by signing on the right-hand side. So it kind of exaggerated the fact that I had that a little bit off. But yeah, that's one of the things that when I look back at this overhead footage, I can spot symmetry problems that I can't spot when I'm working because I'm kind of looking across it where it's down at my table. I'm not working on an easel. So a tip would be to take a photograph of your work before you're done and then go back and finish it. Because if I'd done that, I would have been able to see that I had that off and I could have fixed it. Even tipping them off at the table isn't quite enough. I could look at it at a mirror. That would have been a good idea too, and that probably would have stuck out to me at that point. But I didn't, and oh well, that's fine. I could probably go in and fix it a little bit now, whether I will or not. Probably not. Maybe I will. I don't know. But yeah, I'm just kind of layering up colors. I think one of the good things of having a limited supply palette, and you're probably thinking, that doesn't look limited to me, Lindsay, you have a lot of colors. But like in the art sticks and whatnot, when you have a limited palette, you end up layering up colors to get just the color you want, and it adds a harmony because you're using the same colors over and over again, but it also builds up a complexity of color working in layers versus just putting a bunch of color down and just kind of cramming it together. That does just create a better feel of cohesiveness, I think, in the colored pencil piece. So just kind of something to think about if you're, and not fret about if you can't afford a large set of pencils. You're probably going to be better off because you'll learn how to mix your colors and you'll get a more cohesive look. Here I'm just using a black pencil just to go in and put in those accents. Now, a lot of the accents that I'm doing black are actually metallic accents, and it's the reflections that I'm seeing that are black, because I'm seeing some white reflections and some black reflections, and that's going to give me that hint of a metallic look. Same thing with a little metal twist of wire that's holding the cork down. So A lot of times we think we need to have these metallics, but metallics don't actually show up as being metallic in a flat drawing, especially once you put it behind glass or you're looking at it at a distance. It's, you know, a metallic product isn't going to give you that realistic metallic look. And like I said, I'm not going for realism, like photorealism here, but I am kind of going for an impression of a realistic champagne bottle. And here is the picture all done. I'm just going to sign my name along the bottom. I should have done it on the other edge, and that would have balanced out my little issue there with the bottom of the bottle, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, and it was a lot of fun to draw. I hope you enjoyed it. Please give me a thumbs up if you did. Until next time, happy crafting.